Welcome to this deep dive. We're going to be exploring the animal kingdom as like a book of the dead. We're diving into some excerpts from a text that uses this metaphor to describe animal camouflage and mimicry. And I'm joined by an expert to kind of help us decode all of this.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful metaphor. Like just imagine looking at an animal and being able to read the challenges its ancestors faced, almost like a historical record etched into their very appearance. And that's what we're going to try and do today.
Okay, cool. So let's start with like camouflage. One of the most obvious ways animals write their stories in this Book of the Dead. The text focuses on the Mojave Desert lizard, which blends right into the sand. So what can this tell us about its evolutionary history?
Well, that lizard's camouflage is a direct result of natural selection, favoring individuals who are best at hiding from predators in that specific environment. Over generations, this has led to the incredible adaptations we see today.
It's like a painter meticulously recreating the desert landscape on the lizard's back. But the text also points out that the level of detail and camouflage varies depending on the seeing conditions of the predator. What does that mean?
It's all about the evolutionary arms race between predator and prey. If a predator has poor vision and hunts in dim light, even a slight resemblance to the background can be a huge advantage for the prey. But as predators evolved better eyesight, the camouflage had to become more and more sophisticated.
So it's like a constant game of one-upmanship, with both sides pushing each other to evolve more effective strategies. The text uses the example of a lichen-colored frog, which blends perfectly into a lichen-covered environment.
Exactly. And think about the tiger with its stripes breaking up its form in dappled sunlight. Or the snow leopard, almost invisible against a rocky backdrop. These are all masterpieces of camouflage, each tailored to the specific visual challenges of their environment.
It's incredible how much we can learn about an animal's world just by observing its camouflage. But here's something that kind of puzzles me. The text mentions that most mammals are dichromatic, meaning they see fewer colors than we do. So how does that affect camouflage?
That's a great question. It means that camouflage that might fool our trichromatic vision could be completely ineffective against a dichromatic predator. Like a bright red berry that stands out to us might be invisible to a bird.
So the Book of the Dead isn't just about the animal itself. It's also about the visual systems of its predators. That adds another layer of complexity to this story.
Absolutely. And here's another fascinating wrinkle. Why do so many well-camouflaged animals still have symmetrical patterns? The text uses the example of an owl whose plumage perfectly mimics tree bark but is given away by its symmetrical markings.
Yeah, now that you mention it, it does seem counterintuitive. Wouldn't asymmetry be like a better camouflage strategy?
You would think so. The text explores a couple of possibilities. One is that there might be developmental constraints that make it difficult to break away from symmetry during embryological development. So it's not that symmetry is actually beneficial, it's just really hard to escape from an evolutionary standpoint.
So even the Book of the Dead has its limitations, dictated by the fundamental rules of biology. But the text also suggests that symmetry might offer advantages in social interactions, perhaps for intimidating rivals or attracting mates.
Right. It might be a trade-off. An animal might sacrifice a bit of camouflage for a social advantage. It's a reminder that evolution isn't always about perfect solutions. It's about finding the best compromise for survival and reproduction.
That makes sense. Speaking of trade-offs, the text also mentions that owls might close one eye to reduce their symmetry and become less conspicuous. Have you ever heard of that?
It's kind of a humorous speculation by the author, but it raises an interesting question. How much control do animals have over their own camouflage? Can they actively adjust it based on the situation?
That's a fascinating thought. It would be incredible to observe an owl winking its way into invisibility. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about another fascinating camouflage strategy: animal statues. What makes them different from the paintings we've been discussing?
Think of a statue as an animal whose entire body mimics a specific object, rather than just blending into the background. The text uses the example of the stick insect, which looks exactly like a twig, or the tawny frogmouth, resembling a broken tree branch.
Oh, I love the tawny frogmouth. It's amazing how they can sit perfectly still for hours, looking just like part of the tree. What's the key difference between this type of camouflage and something like the lichen-colored frog?
A statue remains effective even when it's removed from its natural background. Like a stick insect on a lawn is still going to look like a stick, unlike the peppered moth, which needs to be on the right kind of tree bark to be camouflaged.
So it's like the difference between a painting that relies on its context and a sculpture that stands alone. The text also mentions the leafy sea dragon, which resembles seaweed. Would it be safer in a bed of seaweed or out in the open?
That's a great question. It highlights the fact that even the most perfect camouflage can have its limitations. While being surrounded by real seaweed might initially seem like better camouflage, if the leafy sea dragon moves or behaves differently, it could actually become more conspicuous.
It's a constant dance between blending in and standing out, isn't it? What I love about this Book of the Dead concept is that it's not just about pretty pictures. It's about understanding the complex interplay between an animal's appearance, its environment, and the evolutionary pressures that have shaped it over millions of years.
And we've only just begun to scratch the surface. There's a whole other world of animal deception and defense waiting for us to explore. Strategies that go beyond simply blending in or looking like inanimate objects.
Ooh, you've got me intrigued.
Yeah.
What else does this Book of the Dead have in store for us?
Let's talk about mimicry, where animals imitate other living things for survival. It's a fascinating chapter in the Book of the Dead, full of surprising twists and turns.
I'm ready for some surprises. What kind of mimicry strategies does the text highlight?
One that really struck me was the lampsilus cardium muscle. You wouldn't think a muscle would be capable of elaborate deception, but this one has evolved a remarkable trick.
Oh, wow. What does it do?
So think about it. Mussel larvae need to attach to a fish's gills to survive. But how do you get a fish to cooperate with that? Well, this mussel's brood pouch has evolved to look just like a small fish, complete with fake eyes and even swimming movements.
So it creates a decoy to attract larger fish. That's incredible. But what happens next?
When a fish tries to snatch the decoy fish, the mussel releases a cloud of larvae right into its face. It's a brilliant example of a parasite manipulating its host for its own benefit.
Wow, it makes you wonder how such a complex adaptation could even evolve. What other examples of mimicry does the text mention?
There's this Iranian snake. It has a spider-like tail tip. It hides in its burrow with just the tail tip sticking out, wiggling it around to mimic a spider.
So it's using a lure to attract its prey. What kind of prey would fall for that?
Birds. They swoop down expecting a tasty spider and get a mouthful of snake instead. It shows how even a small, seemingly insignificant adaptation can have a major impact on an animal's survival.
These examples show that the Book of the Dead isn't just about blending in. Sometimes it's about standing out in a very specific way. The text also talks about warning colors, like those bright yellow and black stripes on wasps and bees. How do those fit into the story?
Warning colors are like a big advertisement, saying, "Don't eat me, I'm dangerous." Predators quickly learn to associate those colors with a painful experience and avoid them in the future.
But the text also mentions that not all animals with warning colors are actually dangerous, right?
That's right. Some animals, like the harmless hoverfly, mimic the coloration of wasps to deter predators. Even though they can't sting, it's a clever form of deception, exploiting the predator's learned aversion to those warning colors.
It's like a bluff. I might look like a wasp, but I won't sting you. And it works because the predator doesn't want to take the risk.
Exactly. It's another example of how evolution often favors the most efficient solution, even if it involves a bit of trickery. But visual deception goes beyond colors and patterns. The text also talks about false faces, like that startled predators. Remember the Dinister butterfly chrysalis that looks just like a snakehead?
Yes. It's amazing how a simple visual cue can trigger a predator's instinctive fear response.
Imagine you're a bird, about to grab a tasty caterpillar, and suddenly you're staring into the eyes of what looks like a snake. You'd probably think twice.
Definitely. The text also mentions the owl moth with eye spots that resemble a predator's gaze. And then there's that amusing anecdote about the Babar effect, where painting eyes on the rumps of cattle deters lion attacks.
Yeah, it's a fascinating example of how even a simple visual cue can exploit a predator's hardwired instincts.
This Book of the Dead concept is really opening my eyes to the hidden worlds of animal adaptations. But the text emphasizes that this book isn't just limited to what we can see on the surface. It extends to internal organs, behaviors, even cellular processes.
That's right. It's like a multi-layered text with deeper and deeper levels of meaning.
I'm ready to go deeper. What kind of secrets are hidden in those deeper layers of the Book of the Dead?
Absolutely. Like opening up the animal and finding a whole new set of pages written in the language of anatomy, physiology, and behavior.
Okay, give me an example. What kind of internal adaptations are we talking about here?
Well, think about the mechanisms of a bird's wing, perfectly designed for flight, or the complex biochemistry of a plant, converting sunlight into energy. These internal adaptations are just as much a product of natural selection as the external ones.
So it's not just about what we can see on the outside. It's also about how efficiently an organism functions on the inside. But why aren't these internal adaptations as obvious as camouflage or mimicry?
That's a great question. One reason is that external features are often shaped by interactions with other organisms, especially predators. These interactions drive the evolution of visible, easily readable traits, like a gazelle's speed. It's a direct response to the cheetah's pursuit.
So it's like an ongoing dialogue between predator and prey, each pushing the other to evolve more sophisticated adaptations, but internal adaptations are more about optimizing an organism's own internal workings.
Exactly. They're about fine-tuning the machinery of life, whether it's the efficiency of a heart pumping blood or the way an enzyme breaks down food.
So while these internal adaptations might not be as visually striking as a butterfly's wings or a chameleon's camouflage, they're just as crucial for survival.
Absolutely. And they're no less remarkable. It's just that they're written in a different language, a language of biochemistry, genetics, and physiology.
The text quotes Darwin, who described natural selection as constantly scrutinizing every variation, rejecting the bad and preserving the good. It's like an invisible sculptor, shaping life over millions of years, refining every detail both inside and out.
And the result is this incredible diversity of life we see all around us. Each species carries within it this Book of the Dead, a testament to the power of evolution, to craft elegant solutions to the challenges of survival.
It's amazing to think that even the smallest, seemingly insignificant creatures have a story to tell. A story etched into their very being makes you realize that we're all connected, part of this grand evolutionary narrative.
And that story is still being written. Every day, new adaptations are emerging, new pages are being added to the Book of Life.
So what can we learn from reading this Book of the Dead? What does it tell us about the world and our place in it?
I think it teaches us to appreciate the incredible complexity and interconnectedness of life. It encourages us to look beyond the surface, to marvel at the intricate workings of nature, and to recognize that even the smallest creature has a story to tell.
It's a reminder that life is a constant process of adaptation and innovation. And by understanding the forces that have shaped life on Earth, we gain a deeper appreciation for the beauty and resilience of the natural world.
And who knows what other pages we might uncover in this book as we continue to explore. What other secrets of survival, adaptation, and resilience are waiting to be revealed?
That's a great question for all of us to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive. We encourage you to continue your own exploration into the wonders of evolution. What stories will you uncover in your own explorations of the natural world? Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep reading